Hi, and welcome to the Make Things Club, a club for people who like to make things. My name is Sarah, and I'm coming at you from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Today is February 5th, I do believe, and this is episode 4. Took a bit of a hiatus last week. Things have been a little unmotivating, so I'm sorry for the missed episode last week, but even though this one's coming at you late this week, I am going to get it done and send it out to you anyways. So, what should I say? Yeah, I've decided to use my personal Instagram account instead of an official Instagram account because it takes too much work to manage too, and a lot of the stuff that I do is fun to share with friends and family too. So I am now using my personal Instagram, which is @loosepages. You can also find me online as pretty much Loose Pages anywhere. So Twitter, Instagram, I don't know if Pinterest uses names, but I do have a different name on Ravelry. So you can find me as Romperlust, R-O-M-P-E-R-L-U-S-T. We do have an official group open on Ravelry as well, so you can find it under the Make Things Club podcast. Thanks to everyone who's been signing up and joining the group, and thanks to the pair of Elises that have been starting conversations in the introductions thread. I encourage everyone to go over and introduce yourself and let me know who you are, what you like to do, what you like to craft on, if you're working on anything cool, where you're from, or even just how you stumbled across my podcast. So thank you to everyone who's been doing that. Thank you to everyone who's been subscribing to my YouTube channel. I really appreciate it. And I guess we'll just kind of move on. So it's kind of weird getting right back into the scheme of things after not recording for a week and a half, because the last week and a half has been super productive, and then knitting just kind of fell off the face of the earth for me. So I guess first off I'll kind of talk about some of my finished objects because I have some. I have 3. So I guess we'll go right into that. So let me just grab one for you. So I finished my pair of socks, which is really exciting because this is my very first pair. I have random mismatched things all over the place, but this is my finished pair. So these ones were knit in the Fildar Folk 100 yarn and in the Anise colorway, and this is the Rose City Rollers pattern. So they've been washed, they've been worn a couple times, and they're super awesome. I love them. So now I'm kind of jumping on the bandwagon as to why people really like hand knit socks. So yeah, they're pretty cool. I did experience, and this is something that I'm experimenting with on another pair that I've kind of started, but I do have laddering issues, and I can't quite figure out if it's because I'm knitting too tightly or too loosely. I did kind of go through the search function on Ravelry to kind of see what other people have been saying about the whole laddering thing, and I was really giving her and just yanking on that first stitch when I changed DPNs, and yeah, you can, it's pretty noticeable. But someone said, I can't remember who, a bunch of people agreed with them, so it was like a mob collective agreement that pulling on the first stitch, not a good idea. Pulling on the second stitch, that's where it kind of helps you create that seamless fabric. So I'm gonna try knitting a little looser. I don't quite have a set knitting style yet. On some projects I am very tight. On some projects I knit very loosely. So kind of that consistency still hasn't hit with me yet. But for socks and stuff, like on DPNs, I can be really tight just because I have that subconscious fear of things slipping off my needles. And especially when you're using carbons, they tend to have, well, I could pull one out and kind of show you. But with the carbons, so I bought a set of these off Amazon, because why not? But with the carbons that I use, so I'm always pretty much using a 2.75 millimeter, which I don't know what size US that is. But they have this nice sharp tip, and then they have this kind of black, this black part is a lot of, I don't know, it's got this coating on it that kind of makes yarn not slip. So when you combine that with the fact that I am a pretty tight knitter, sometimes it's impossible to kind of just get into a roll and knit. So I'm trying to loosen up a little bit so that my needles are, well, so that my yarn slides on my needles a little bit, because sometimes I'm really pushing and trying to get it to go off and it just doesn't want to go. So for my next pair of socks that I'm working on, I really want to start loosening up a little bit and just trusting, you know what, it's not going to fall off the needles, because that's what your fingers do. They kind of keep the things from falling off the needles. So just loosen up a little bit and tug on the second stitch to see if that kind of relieves my laddering. I'm not quite at the point yet where I'm like, let's just magic loop it, because magic loop doesn't make sense to me. And I've watched a couple of videos and yeah, it's fine. Like I get the concept of knitting in the round with it, but like once you get to the heel flap and all that other stuff, I'm just like, ugh. And as much as I want to, right now I'm not interested in doing afterthought heel or fish lips kiss heel. I'm kind of just still wanting to get into the motion of working on DPNs, working a normal heel flap and a gusset and all that kind of stuff, and just kind of getting comfortable with that first before I move on. However, one of the podcasts that I watch, the Sticks Plus Twine podcast, Eric recently switched to magic loop as well, and it seems like he's quite enjoying it. And I know he is a self-appointed fairly new knitter, just like I am as well. So I might try it. Right now, I have other priorities, so let's just keep it at that. So yeah, I did finish my pair of socks. I love them. I might pay more attention next time, just because I'm not sure I like this much cuff. I'm strictly an ankle sock wearer. I like the sport socks that really don't go up higher than my instep. I don't like cuffs, so I guess I'm gonna need to start finding a whole bunch of different patterns that are ankle, because I really don't have time for pulling socks up. I just like the ankles. But I don't think I'll knit quite as much cuff, and I think I'll pay more attention to make sure that they're actually the same size, because this time I know that they're not. So yeah, there's my socks, they're done. The next thing that I finished, finally, is my Ruby Jane shawl. So this is a pattern by Michelle Meilinger. It's a free pattern on Ravelry. So is the Rose City Rollers pattern. Mara Catherine Briner is the one who's responsible for that beautiful pattern, and it's free as well on Ravelry. But I did finish my Ruby Jane shawl. Woo. Yeah, so I can tell you right now, there are so many mistakes in this that I don't even, whatever. I wasn't completely in love with the pattern. It's really simple, it's really easy, but my attention span lately has been not great. So one of the things that I really value in patterns, and some of these patterns are paid patterns, and I think that might be a little bit of a distinction between free patterns and then paid patterns. So paid patterns will always have a little bit more to them. Anyone can put together a free pattern and throw it up on the internet. There's no commission of pattern verification or anything like that. It's basically just whatever, throw it up on the internet and it's done. So I don't know if this is just something that I've encountered because I am such a new knitter and I've only knit 3 shawls in my life. And I really like when the repeats on patterns are consistent. So I'm one of those people that'll put a marker everywhere. So once I see that there's a pattern repeat, gets a marker at the beginning and a marker at the end of that repeat, so that God forbid I screw up and I have to backtrack and see where did I go wrong or count or do something. I only have to count this certain section of the repeat. So it's just a lot easier to kind of keep it contained. It's like chapters of a book. So if I'm like, oh, I need to go back and reference something, then it's in between those stitch markers. It's great. I'm happy. With the Ruby Jane shawl pattern, it's so easy just because of the stockinette, and you've really only got these 2 borders here. Half of the pattern is just knitting, doing a yarn over, knitting 2 together, and then doing another yarn over, and then knit stitch. So it's super easy. The only thing that's hard is just making sure that your numbers are paying attention and not drinking wine while do this. But just making sure that your numbers are correct on both sides so that everything is even. Once you get into the lace pattern part, there are certain repeats, and they're in the pattern, nicely, and you can tell this is a repeat section. But when I started placing markers at my repeat sections, I would find 2 rows up when I'm changing slightly that the stitch counts don't fit in those pattern repeats anymore. So it's almost like I put my repeats in, and then on the back side when you do the purl row all the way across, I would take the stitch markers out and then put them in again, and then after a certain point I was just like, screw this, I'm not doing this anymore. So I gave up, and then of course my stitch counts were off. I would get to the very end of the pattern row, and then I'd be like, oh, I am missing 5 stitches, so I would just make 5 stitches and be like, whatever. And then I would, I've made so many mistakes. And I think that was a part of the pattern just kind of being a little new to me and me not paying attention, and definitely me just going, screw this. So I just finished it. I don't think it has a truly discernible pattern, like things like the geometry shawl where everything is very linear, then you'll notice it. But like I said, I don't see any discernible pattern in here. So it just is like a pretty lace mismatched whatever. I'm really happy with it, even though I kind of gave up towards the end. I do really like the yarn. This was knit with Smith & Ewe Marianne Sparkle in Naturally Navy, and it's just a fun little, it's really small, so it's not a, I wouldn't wear it this way or anything because I feel like it's just not quite big enough. But I do kind of like wearing it so that it's just a nice embellishment for a plain t-shirt or something. Yeah, and I'm definitely going to be knitting with Stellina all the time. It's so much fun. I really like Stellina. I really like anything glittery and sparkly. And Stellina yarn is something that my partner can't get mad at for, because nothing's going to fall out and just show up anywhere else in the apartment. So this is done. Happy to have that off the needles. And then my last finished object was a quick, I'm actually lazy, I haven't quite weaved in this end yet, but was my Conversationalist hat by Plucky Knitter Designs. So this sucker here. So the bottom is made out of Rain City Knits, Krista from Vancouver. This is her graffiti colorway, and I love it. I waited months and months. I didn't want to order online because shipping is stupid. But when I went to Knit City last year in Vancouver, I was basically there for her yarn. I love it. And this is the Sadness Garn, I believe that's what they're called, the baby alpaca. I held this one double just because it is, it was a finer weight, so I wanted it to really match the worsted weight of the graffiti. And then I made myself a little pom-pom in this color. So I was actually surprised how well the colors ended up working out together. I wasn't sure if they would work just because they're not quite as neon as the bottom. So the one thing that I will say about myself is that I have a really fat head. And I'm gonna start swatching, but I'll get onto this. I'll talk about the swatching thing in a bit. I have a really fat head, so I was knitting. Actually, it looks kind of cute now that my hair is done and I'm actually wearing makeup. But I have a really wide head, so when it comes to things like cuffs or bottoms of hats, I really have to knit like the largest size. The problem with that is that the rest of my head is kind of normal size. Like, I don't know what it is about this circumference thing, but it's just, I wish I could wear headbands and stuff like that, but my head just doesn't want to. So when I knit these things, I always go for the larger size. However, I need to keep in mind that the measurements, so for instance, you were knitting 1x1 rib for 3 inches, and then you're supposed to do stockinette for like 5 inches, and then you have your top for, I can't even remember what the pattern says. It's a free pattern, so check it out. But when they say the lengths, they're talking about someone who, you know, has a gigantic head for everything. So when it comes to knitting toques and stuff, because I need it to actually go on my scalp, I need to remember that when it comes to the pattern, not all the other lengths are going to be perfect for me just because my head is just wide, it's just not long. So I do find that sometimes when I make hats, they're way too big at the back. So if I were going to do this again, I'm toying with the idea of doing it anyways, but ripping out maybe 1.5 inches here, up to about there, and then doing the ribbing a little bit, because I don't want it to be too slouchy, because I really like the decrease pattern that went into the top, and I don't think that the proportions are quite what I wanted them to be. However, I am really happy with the yarn. It's really, really warm. The problem is that we've had a very, very, very mild winter so far, like way more mild than usual. So I just don't have a chance to wear too many winter things right now. It's currently like 5 degrees outside, and I would just skip wearing a jacket, period, because 5 degrees in February is like tropical. So yeah, I'm finished my hat. Haven't really worn it too much. I love it. The colors are great. And that's my 3rd finished object. So hooray, I finished 3 things. That's probably why I got into a bit of a funk last week. I finished everything relatively quickly, and then I was like, now what am I supposed to do? So I'm still kind of feeling a little bit of that meandering between patterns and yarns and stuff, and I just don't really feel super passionate or invested in anything right now. So I'm kind of backing off the knitting a little bit, because I don't want to start something that I'm not super crazy about, because I have a tendency to cast on several things, and then sorry, I thought I wasn't recording for a second, and I was like, are you kidding? But we're okay. But yeah, I have a tendency to cast on a lot of stuff and then get really excited about it, and then halfway through I am bored as hell. So if I'm not super invested in the finished project, or, you know, wearing something so hard that I need to finish it, then I can feel a little bit of a blah through the middle, where I just don't want to do any more knitting. So right now I'm focusing on smaller stuff, and I guess I can kind of start going through my works in progress right now. So right now, like I said, I started working on another sock. It's still a Rose City Roller pattern, so don't get excited. I'm still plunking away at the same old things. However, I'm trying a different approach right now. So this is what I've got so far. And instead of a stockinette cuff, I did a 2x2 ribbing. So I am hoping that that'll kind of fit a little bit better. But yeah, I'm sorry for the light. I'm doing a different setup today. I've got my phone right there, and my computer is just kind of taking a nap. I usually record on my computer, but today I'm trying something different. So the light isn't as good and it doesn't focus as much, but I don't care. This is easier for me today. And this is Koi Goo, and this is the thing. I'll go to my notes. The colorway is 454P, and I don't know about you, but I think I hate it when colorways are not colored names. They're just numbers. It's kind of lazy. I know a lot of other people agree with me on that. But it's a beautiful, like, almost like a watercolor kind of thing. You can see a little bit of it there. So it's got different flecks, very pastel, hand-painted yarn. And I'm doing the heel, and it's just a normal slip stitch heel, in a different color. So I'm going to do my heel and my toe in this pink. And look at you guys, I actually leveled up a little bit when it came to balling yarn. So I've got this cute little baby ball. It's so cute. And this is another Koi Goo, so it's KPM, so it's their Koi Goo Premium Merino. And that's just pink. I got both of these in Vancouver at the 3 Bags Full yarn shop when I was there in October last year. And these guys were just little tiny minis. Kind of look like that. They're really cute and springy, and I just like squishing them. But I got these in Vancouver, and these were like all in a giant jar, and I kind of dug out the ones that were the most similar. Some of them are really not Some of the colors you can clearly tell are a different colorway, but we're gonna work through it. It'll be fine. If you're gonna nitpick me about that, that's not cool. But here's the little ball. It's cute. I like hand-painted speckled stuff. So I'm working on a pair of Rose City rollers again. These ones will have ribbing instead of the stockinette cuffs. And I did all of that progress in one night and haven't touched it since. So that's like 5 days ago, I think, if not longer. We'll see how long it takes for me to do those. And I'm also using a different set of needles. So these were the first DPNs that I ever got to do socks with. They're the Addy Flip Sticks. And yeah, it's gonna be loud outside, there's construction. But yeah, these guys are awesome because they've got 2 different points on the end. So these ones are the sharp ones and these ones are the dull ones. You can kind of compare and contrast here. So the sharp one is really good for decreases and stuff. I really like how easy it is to get in there with both stitches and just, you know, do it up. The blunt side is really good for pressing again so that you don't have a hole in your finger by the end of it. So these were the first pair of DPNs that I ever knit a sock with, and I really like them. And one thing that I will say about them is that they're very slippery, so if you don't have good control over your stitches on the needles, you might have a bad time. Other than that, they're great. I really like them. They're slippery, they're pretty, and I really like that sharp point. Other than that, I don't think I have anything that I recently started. I started swatching for, I've been wanting to do a pine bough cowl for a long time. So I'm kind of just swatching and just making sure that my needle size will be okay. The pine bough cowl, I'll just shove a picture in there, but I've been obsessed with this pattern even before I really started knitting. It's been on my Ravelry page or on my Ravelry library queue for a while, and I finally found all of the yarn that I need for it, so I'm gonna start maybe. It's also February and now I'm like, well, if I knit stuff for winter, it's not gonna be winter for very long. But I do kind of want to start working on this one. So I'm using Kenzie Haiku, from Haiku I mean. And this is the, I believe it's the Oceana colorway. And I really like the little flecks you get, the little tweedy flecks. So that I will also be using, sorry. But I have, the contrast color is the Kiwi colorway, I believe. It's called Kiwi. So this will be the contrast color in the pattern. And it's a really pretty, like, my partner calls this like baby puke green, but I love it, I don't care. But it's got little tiny blue flecks and everything in it. It's really pretty, so I'm hoping to maybe start working on that. We'll see. I'm kind of fatigued by knitting, so I might just take a break and try something else for a bit. So, oh, and then of course, segue into that, Kemper from the Junk Yarn podcast, who is literally my favorite podcaster. So if you haven't watched anything from Junk Yarn, please go and watch her. She's wonderful. But Kemper has a Finish in February cowl going on her Ravelry page and Instagram. So I did kind of say that I was going to join that and really work on the things that I have in progress right now and just finish everything this month. So if you want to join, go to her Ravelry page. She's got a podcast group for Junk Yarn, and there's a thread there for her Finish in Feb cowl. So I've joined that. The things that I'm gonna sneeze. Or not. Okay, there we go. The things that I have on my list to finish is my very first sock that I ever made, this cute little guy. And actually, you know, I put it on the other day just because I was like, wonder if, like, I don't remember it fitting that well. I kind of hated it when I finished it. But I'm looking at it now and, like, it's cute. And I love the colors. I kind of love how they pool. So this is Manos del Uruguay Alegria yarn, and it's in their Columbina colorway, also known as like A9009. I really hate when people do that. But I'm looking at it now and I'm like, okay, not only is it cute, I tried it on and it fits really well, and I'm looking and there's like no laddering. Everything else that I've done on DPNs has laddering, and this is the very first sock that I've ever made in my entire life, and it's like perfect. So I think I'm gonna knit his friend and have that done, so I'll have a full set. So that's part one of my Finish and Fed Cal attempts. Another thing that I've got started, that I started in October, and it's such a mess right now, is there's a pattern by Church Mouse called the Easy Folded Poncho, and it's a paid pattern. And I was like obsessed with having one and wearing it, and then I kind of just got bored. Like, ponchos, if you can knit a poncho and not want to die halfway through, good for you, because I've kind of had a lot of other experiences with podcasters that have, or friends that have kind of knit a poncho and then just kind of been like, it was literally like pulling teeth to finish it. And I totally get it, because it's just stockinette. It's boring, and it's a lot of stockinette. So I started my Easy Folded Poncho when I got home from Vancouver in October, and this is what I've got so far. Now, I can't find the pattern, and I have the paper pattern. I don't know where it is. So that is a problem, because I've searched all the obvious places that I think it could be, and they're not there. So I need to find the pattern, because I also really want to check my gauge, because I don't think my gauge is where it's supposed to be. And if that's the case, and I have to redo it, I'm just not going to do it. It's that simple. So I really love this color. It's, I don't think it has a color name, but it is Rowan Felted Tweed. And you can see all the pretty little flecks of color in there. I also have my little Fox Progress Keeper. And as you can tell, I haven't done a lot of progress. So this is a mess, but I either want to finish it or abandon it completely, because it's just been sitting in this beautiful little folded up part of my like stash. There's also a pair of Addy needles on here, and these are part of the interchangeable click kit. So I'm missing a pair of needles from my interchangeable set. And I will say this about the Addies. I love how they go together. So it's basically a little mechanism inside the needle that when you press, moves, and then you can lock it in place. So there is no chance that these things are going to go whenever you're knitting. The cords are also really nice and flexible. The one thing that I am sad about that I probably should have researched more is the tips. So these are just the plain basic kit. The tips are very blunt. I find it almost impossible to do shawl knitting with these, and I have gone out and bought fixed circulars for shawls that have much pointier tips, because these are pretty blunt. So I think if I was to go back all over again and buy, and I was going to buy a set of interchangeable needles, that I would definitely get the lace tips. Other than that, I love them and I wouldn't change anything, but I just think now that I know a little bit more where my knitting attention lies, it's more with shawls, and I could definitely use the sharper tips. So this is another thing that I'm hoping to finish, like finish or abandon. And last but not least, my mess of a blanket that I haven't touched since the last time I talked to you guys. So once again, it's a mess, but I would like to finish my blanket, and this is kind of the major one that if I can finish this month, then I will be very, very excited. So I kind of talked about this, but I kind of didn't talk about it. I have a tendency to just get really nervous on camera and just blow through things. So at this point, I'm just going to kind of mention a little bit more about it. So I don't have a pattern in mind for this. It was based off of a blog post that I saw by Smith Academy, if I believe correctly. It's the color blocked Afghan. And essentially all it is cheap yarn. So it's just the impeccable loops and threads, but you're holding it double, so you need 2 of each color for your Afghan. I kind of just knit a couple, I knit to see how many stitches per inch were in my lazy swatch, I guess. And then I kind of figured out how wide I wanted it to be. So I think I ended up casting on about 120 stitches. I'm not quite sure now, and I didn't write it down. I should use my notes better. But once I kind of cast, oh my goodness. Once I kind of cast everything on, I decided on how long I wanted my colors to be. So I think they ended up being, I think 20 garter rows per color. And I haven't touched it since I brought it on the podcast last, but good Lord. So the gray, so I've got this blue, I've got this lime green, I've got this gray. I'm going to be doing, oh Lord, I don't even want to know what happened to this one. The orange, and then a dark blue. So I need to finish this because, you know what, it's gonna, by the time that I finish it, I'm gonna really regret the color choices that I've made, so. And the stuff that I have left over, I'm gonna make my cats a little Afghan too, because that's the kind of person that I am. Also because Stella, my kitten, loves to lay on that blanket. So usually I'll be knitting and making some progress, and then she'll come and plop herself on top of it, and I won't have no more time to knit. So I'd like to get that done. My sock, the poncho, the blanket, and I'm not going to count that Rose City roller. I'm calling them ribbed city rollers on my project page on Ravelry, but I'm not going to count that as part of my finish in FebCal, just because I don't want to. I have to knit another sock. So in terms of, let me just double check because I had a lot to talk about today. Oh, another thing that I'll mention, just because I was super excited, my Ruby Jane shawl included a very stressful game of Yarn Chicken. I have lost every single game of Yarn Chicken that I've started. It was really stressful to the point where I was measuring how many grams I had left after each row. So I think I ended up with maybe about 3 to 4 inches of yarn left, and that was after the bind off, and my goodness, I was so excited. I've never won a game before. This was the first time I ever won, and I didn't have any other yarn that I could substitute in at the last minute just in case I ran out of yarn for the bind off. So, woohoo, prayer hand emojis. Yeah, other than that, I don't have a lot for stash in hand. That's a lie. I have lots of stash in hand. So I recently hand dyed my own yarn with my sister-in-law in Kelowna in December, and I loved it. Those are actually the ones that I did right there. And I really wanted to have a nitty naughty of my own so that I could hank things up when I needed to. I was looking online, Amazon was pretty expensive, everything else is pretty expensive, and I hate our Canadian dollar right now. So I'm really excited that I found a nitty naughty in the yarn shop in Stony Plain. So it's about a half-an-hour drive out of the city. I've got one though, so I'm really excited. This one is by Ashford. So this will come in handy. I'm really glad that I found it. So that's my first stash enhancement. Another thing that I was really excited to get in the mail, and I actually got it, I think the day of or the day after my last, when I recorded last. So this is my project bag from Jenna Rose Handmade. And it's the Stars and the Trees? I can't remember what it's called. But it's gorgeous. I really, really like it. It's a little less structured than I was thinking it would be, but it's got a really nice lining on it. The zipper is super, super sturdy, and the fabric is just beautiful. So I'm really excited about this. I am excited to put something in it because it's such a pretty bag. I have to have a really pretty project to put in it, and so far it's been unused. So I'm waiting for like the perfect project. And then on top of that, I mentioned before Krista from Rain City Knits is a indie dyer in Vancouver who calls herself the Queen of Neon, and she's the one who made the graffiti colorway that I used for my hat. This guy right here. But yeah, she's wonderful. I got to meet her. She gave me a sticker. I really like her. She's great. But she had a studio sale a couple weeks ago on Instagram, and it was basically a mystery. You bought a lot, and that lot would get mailed out, and it would be anything from random stuff that they had too much of, colorways that they were experimenting with but never actually did anything with, test colors, and just a surplus of stuff that they needed to make room for in the studio. So I ordered one, and I think I ordered lot number 3 because I really like the number 3. And I got these ones. So I was I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little disappointed I didn't get any of the teal. She posted a picture on Instagram that kind of gave away some of the stuff as she was packaging things up. And they had the purple. I'm really excited about the purple, but the teal, I was hoping to get some teal, but I didn't. However, I do have a bunch of bright yarn, and this is totally not what I would usually get. So the first one is the Super Sock, which is 75% superwash merino and 25% nylon. And I think I'll use I might make a pair of socks with this because they're super bright, but I also might just use them for heels and toes and other things. So there's that one. This one, you can tell, was an older one because she hasn't had this logo in a while. But this one is, I believe it's still sock, oh, it's a little bit heavier than sock weight, but it's 75% superwash merino and 25% tussis silk. So that's a sweet green. And then out of these purple ones, it's the same kind of thing. It's 75% superwash merino wool and 25% tussis silk. And then this is the purple. So I got that. And I think that was pretty much it. The one thing that I'll point out that I discovered this past week that basically has been my favorite thing of all time, I actually destashed quite a bit. I had a little bit of a short-sighted freak out when I first started knitting, and you know when you walk into Michael's and you're just like, oh my god, everything is so beautiful, I love everything, and you're just like grabbing stuff and putting it in a cart, and then you get home and you're like, what the hell am I even gonna do with this stuff? That was me when I first started knitting. So a lot of stuff that either looked cool or felt cool, or I don't even know some of the stuff that I bought, and it sat in a drawer for the last year pretty much. I haven't looked at it, I haven't touched it, and if I did touch it, I was kind of grossed out by how it felt, or something became unwound and I could not unwind it because it was just slippery and weird. So I'm not a huge fan of acrylic yarn. It has a purpose and definitely is affordable, and I really wish that I could afford higher quality bulky stuff, but sometimes I just have to stick with the acrylic. So I did make a couple things for a family that was made out of acrylic, and then either with the leftover balls or things that I was gonna make that I just don't want to do anymore, I had a ton of surplus Michael's kind of junk yarn. I never used it, haven't touched it, probably got it on sale, and the sale thing probably influenced a lot of my purchasing, where it was just like, oh, I'm just gonna buy it because it's cheap. I discovered that I can return things without a receipt. So I've had stuff sitting in drawers for a year, if not longer, and I brought it in. The thing about returning without a receipt, obviously, is that they're not going to give you full price. So they deduct 20% off of the item, and then they give you the rest of the scan up price on a gift card. So you get store credit, which is understandable, but when you buy like a 2-for-1, or you know, their $10 yarn is on sale for like $5, it's really hard not to go crazy. So I ended up getting back about maybe $93 worth of store credit for Michael's, which is pretty exciting because I've recently started picking up some sewing stuff. So I'm just basically moving my stash to a more productive type of crafting hoarding. So I recently bought a rotary cutter, And I also recently bought I was gonna pull it out, but I'm not going to. And I believe it's acrylic, you know, like the big ruler things for cutting mats. So I got one of those. I got a rotary cutter. My mom gave me a self-healing mat that I could cut fabric with, and I would really like to start experimenting more with the sewing aspect of crafting, and I've been practicing lines with, you know, like those little home ec paper things where you're sewing lines on a piece of paper. Really, for someone who for the life of them could not sew a straight seam, and I was like the laughing stock of my mom's craft. Like, my mom is super crafty. She sews everything. Well, used to. She sewed all of our Halloween costumes growing up. She sewed my sister's grad dress. She's really good at that kind of stuff. So for her to have a daughter that couldn't sew a straight seam was laughable. But turns out there's a little bit of a tape hack that you can just put a piece of, I'm using like a very wide painter's tape on the little grid on your sewing machine to kind of line up the seam allowances, and then you just basically sew against the tape. And for some reason that visual reference is all I really needed to sew straight lines. So I really want to start experimenting with sewing some bento bags from fat quarters that I've kind of accumulated from different fabric stores. So that would be something that I'd like to work on over the next week, is to maybe try out and see if I can do a project bag that way. And also just kind of getting a little bit more acquainted with my sewing machine. Altering clothes has been something that's been very important for me to want to learn, mostly because I have a weird broad shoulders, tiny waist, and then these boobs that cause that gap every single time I wear a button-up shirt. So it would really be awesome if I could kind of maybe buy a size bigger and alter it so that it fits me really nicely, instead of, you know, safety pinning or being awkward and just kind of sitting like this. So clothes alteration is something that is really high up on my radar of things to master. Yeah, and other than that, in terms of, oh, I also have another thing that I've been working on. And this is, I don't know, just like a time waster. But I've been knitting little hearts. And I think I'm just using like impeccable yarn here from Loops and Threads. But I've been making a bunch of these, and they're super fun and really cute. And with Valentine's Day coming up soon, I thought it would be nice to make a little garland for my crafternoon that I have going on the 13th. So I have a bunch of hearts. I'm going to make a little garland with them and put them up on my fireplace. And I don't remember the website that I got the pattern from, but I will put it in the show notes. For that, I'm also using my carbons in the 4mm needles, and I got a little thing on here to turn them into straight needles, because I don't own straight needles that aren't like crazy long. I inherited all my great-grandmother's knitting stuff when she passed away, and as you can see, like, they're really long, because nobody used circulars back then. So I'm just gonna use my DPNs. Yeah, so my partner is kind of hoping for a pair of slippers, so I'm hoping to make him a pair of Simple House slippers in a really dark gray, in the Patton's Classic Worsted yarn. So I really should start those because he requested them a while ago. I am also hoping, and this might not happen this week, but I really want it to, I want to experiment and make my cats a teepee. There's been a couple different YouTube videos on how to do it. The thing that I'm not quite enjoying is the fact that nobody has put down a lot of their instructions and measurements and stuff like that, so it's kind of hard to guesstimate how much fabric I'll need. But I really, really want to make my kittens a teepee for the living room, just to keep it nice. I've been working on a lot of home renovation stuff and just kind of clearing things out and getting new things, so I think it would be a really cute little cat habitat for them to sleep in. Other than that, I think that's pretty much it. I am at a loss for anything else that I need to talk about. So I guess we'll call it a day for now, and I will be back next week, hopefully with some cool stuff to show you. I've been feeling a little sluggish and not myself lately, so the crafting thing has been pushed on to the back burner, and I don't like that. I will be going back to work after a period of stay-at-home sabbatical, I would say, in March. So I would like to get back into a routine of actually scheduling my time so that once I am full-time at work again, it's not gonna be something that I don't have the energy to do. So I would like to have some comprehensive craft goals set for next week, and hopefully I will be able to show you a result of that. So thanks for watching. This was episode 4. I'm Sarah again. You can find me online as Loose Pages on Instagram and Twitter, and also Romperlust on Ravelry. So I hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed, please subscribe. Introduce yourself on the Ravelry thread. I'd love to know more about you guys. And yeah, have a good week and happy crafting. Bye!